Hey guys, welcome into my channel. Today I want to do a ranking of all of the eyeshadows that I tried in 2022. I actually think a lot of these released in 2022. I definitely tried more than 72 palettes in 2022, but I started my channel in July of this year. So before I started my channel, I was decluttering a lot of the makeup that I didn't like and the palettes that weren't working for me. And now I'm going to try and not do that so that I can do videos like this in subsequent years. But I will be ranking all of the eyeshadows that actually stayed in my collection from worst to best. So let's just jump right into it. In the bottom four, and I will pop the number on the screen, there were new releases from BH Cosmetics, and it was their mini travel series. I did pick up 4 of the, I think 5 or 6 that launched, and I've kind of put them here in order of how I like them, but they're all relatively the same. This one is Miami. This color story is just okay. I think I would have liked it a little bit better if it had a lighter shimmer in it, and if these two pinks weren't very, very similar. Not only are they similar in the pan, but they're also very similar on the eyes. The thing with all of these palettes is they were all just really bad quality. These were the first launches that came out after Makeup Revolution purchased them, and I think everyone at the time was kind of saying the same thing, like, is it going to be the same great BH Cosmetics quality? And unfortunately, it's not what I found. I don't think the color stories are necessarily bad. I just think that the quality was the worst of BH Cosmetics that I've ever seen. They weren't very pigmented. I could barely get them to translate on my eye. They were super powdery. It was almost like they weren't picking up on the brush at all. Honestly, it was crazy. These I did have to dig out of my declutter pile that is still in my closet, and I just haven't gotten rid of them yet. But the next one up is Mykonos. I don't think it's an overall bad color story. I do think that having this brown transition shade is actually kind of nice, and they do have a light shimmer in here, and I love both of the colors of these blues. It just was so not pigmented that I could barely get a look out of it. And I love BH Cosmetics, and I'm basically a collector, so for me to get rid of these, it hurts a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I don't even feel good giving them to other people. The next one that I have is the Iceland palette. Again, nothing wrong with the color story. I actually think this is a pretty nice color story. You have a light shimmer, you have a deepening shade out here, and then a transition shade. So yeah, not a bad color story, just really terrible quality. And then I actually like this color story. I like pairing different colors with oranges quite a bit, and I like having a green shimmer in here, but I think this one honestly was, because it's so pastel, it was the least pigmented out of all of them. Those 4 are at the bottom and they are not going to stay. I will end up decluttering those. Next up, I have one from e.l.f. This is one of the bite-sized ones that released this year. This one is an Orange Dreamsicle. You're probably going to hear me say a ton of times in this video that I really love orange shadows, so that's why I picked this up. I did pick this up when the Luminous Putty Bronzer launched because I wanted to pick some of their new releases up and kind of do a full face. This was terrible quality. This was the worst bite-sized eyeshadow that I've tried from e.l.f. before. I have other ones in my collection that I like, and in the photos of this, the shades are very different, but in person, they're very, very similar, and they translate that way to the eye, so you can't really get any depth out of them. I just don't understand why they didn't like give some more deepening shades here. It fades away to almost nothing, and there is the most kickback in a pan I have ever seen out of this tiny little palette. I made the comment in the video when I was trying this on that half my palette was going to be gone after the first look that I created. It was so terrible. It was not good at all. That one won't be one that will be staying in my collection either. The next one that I have is a holiday release from Tarte. This was the Gilded and Glamour duo. I think that I have never been a really big fan of Tarte shadows before. I don't like their Amazonian clay formulation. I didn't like it in their blushes. I know that a lot of people do. I just like a blush that's more pigmented, and I felt like picking up the blush on a fluffy brush just wasn't that easy. But this isn't about the blushes. This is about the palette. I just thought this color story was a little random for Tarte. I think it's good that they stepped out of like their comfort zone of their more neutrals and pinks that they do. I just thought the quality of this was okay. I don't think the mattes are overly pigmented, and I don't think the shimmers are very impactful. Unfortunately, that is what I've found with Tarte shadows in the past, and I've had other collections that I've ended up decluttering just because I just wasn't overly impressed with their quality. Next one that I have is the Gilded one, and I'm sorry if I didn't mention that, but the other one was in Glamour. I like this color story a little bit more. I just think it's more everyday and wearable. It's just my kind of color story. You've got the pinks and purples and neutrals in here, but it's the same thing, just not an overly impressive formula. I don't think the shimmers are anything to write home about. I don't necessarily think that it's a bad palette, and I think it's actually really good for beginners. I think that anybody could pick this up and create an eye look and get something nice out of it. It's just that having such a big collection, I just don't think Tarte does anything in formulation for me that really knocks me off my feet. So the next one that I have is from M Cosmetics. This is one of the Divine Skies, and this is in the Magic Hour color story. I actually love this packaging, and I like a lot of M Cosmetics products, and I was eyeing these for a really long time, and I ended up pulling the trigger this year. The reason that I didn't pick it up sooner is because it's $40 for this, for a 6-pan palette, which is super expensive. They're not big pans, but when I got it, I liked it. Like, I like the color story. It's very safe. I like the shimmers. I like the ratio, 3 mattes to 3 shimmers. Unfortunately, they just don't stay on the eyes. Like, it's just not a long-lasting formula. I just noticed that after like 3 or 4 hours, it didn't look like I was wearing any eyeshadow at all. And part of that is just that they're not overly pigmented shadows, and they are lighter shades, but they could have been more pigmented and more long-lasting, and they just weren't. And for 40 bucks, I wanted to be wowed, and I really wasn't. The next one that I have was a holiday release from Nars. This is the Stargaze eyeshadow palette. I picked this up with the cheek palette that launched at the same time, which they normally do around this time of year. And this eyeshadow palette was okay. This was my first time using an eyeshadow formulation from Nars. I just, again, not overly impressed. I thought the purple shade in the middle was just a little bit out of place because you only have one other cool tone shade in this palette to actually mix it with, which is this one. And I just think that these two shades look kind of muddy together, and the rest of them are pretty warm tone shades. So yeah, that lilac shade to me was just a little out of place unless you wanted to use just that one and then deepen it up with a shimmer in the outer corner. I mean, you could do that. Not overall mad at the color story. Again, it was just a formula thing where I wasn't overly wowed for a $60 palette. This is on sale now, so that was really fast, and I don't know if they do that normally with their limited edition releases, but it is. And I think that it was good. It's just this one shade here, which is my absolute favorite shade. It's just a topper shade. And I'm always disappointed when they do that because I'm just not into toppers. I want shimmers to be really impactful. And so when I started to play with this one, because it looks so beautiful, and I was like, oh, it's a topper. Okay. I think the rest of the shimmers are actually pretty nice in here. And part of it is that I think I'm getting spoiled with indie shadows just a little bit, that the quality of these kind of releases just doesn't overly impress me. The next I have is also a holiday release. This is from LA Girl. This was their Dazzle All the Way palette. This did just come out for holiday. I wanted to try the LA Girl formulation because I had heard in some of these larger palettes, their quality was just, I don't know, stepping up. I think it's a really good beginner palette. This does retail for $20, so it is pricier than say like Profusion or some of the larger palettes that you can get in Walmart. I really do like the color story. I am a neutral girl at heart most days. I don't go out with like this kind of look normally. I would wear something like this on an everyday basis, but I just thought that they were okay. I didn't think the shimmers were fantastic. I didn't think the mattes were fantastic. I think it's a good beginner palette. Again, it just didn't knock my socks off. So nothing bad with this. It just wasn't what I kind of expected when I've been hearing all this hype about LA Girl just really stepping up their formula. I thought it was good. I just didn't think it was great. I have two here from BH Cosmetics, and I hate to put them so low at the bottom. I mean, I'm not calling this the bottom. It's hard to say what the bottom is because I just love eyeshadow palettes, and so I love all makeup products, but eyeshadows for sure, they're the ones that really, like, every time I see a release, I'm like, oh, I know what I can create with that. I never look at a foundation and I'm like, oh yeah, I have an occasion for that foundation. So every one of these eyeshadow palettes, I think from here on out, the ones that I kind of showed you, I'm just a little bit disappointed in, but everyone else I really do like. So this is where it gets tough for me. And it's not that it's necessarily the bottom. It's just that all the ones before were a little bit easier to do. The rest of these are just a little bit harder, and that's the majority of them. So the first one that I have is from BH Cosmetics. This is the Poison Shot collection, and this one is in Nightshade. I think this is a really good quality palette. I don't think there's anything wrong with this collection. I'm just not into a lot of monochromatic looks, and I'm not really into this many purples. Why did I pick it up, you say? Well, I'm pretty much a BH Cosmetic eyeshadow collector, and when I want to play with something colorful or purple, a lot of times I will actually think of BH Cosmetics because most of their formulations and a lot of their older releases, super good. But this has a lot of very similar shades. These two are both shimmers right here, and they translate exactly the same on the eye. And when you get a smaller, like 9-pan palette like this, I think it's really important to try and make variety amongst the shades and not have any 2 or 3 looking very similar. And these ones just are. In addition, these two are very similar to each other. So these two and these two. So it's almost like you lose two shades out of the whole palette because they're the same finish and very, very close in shade, especially when they translate to the eye. And sometimes when you're looking back on camera, you can see a little bit of variation, but when it translates and you're putting it on and they look identical, it's kind of a bummer. So I have played with this a couple of times. Yeah, that's what I've noticed with these. So not a bad formulation thing, more of a monochromatic, and the fact that two of the actual shades look identical to two other shades in the palette. The next one I have is from the same collection. This one's Scorpion King. This one's just so hard. Like, I love these. Ugh, I hate putting these here. Again, it's just a monochromatic thing. I don't go for a lot of monochromatic looks. I love oranges though, so I hate putting this one where it is. It's just more of a neon palette, and I don't go for a lot of neons. I like having it in my collection. It's just that it was a little too neon and I'm not going to get that much use out of it, but I do like the variety in here. The only two shades that are similar are this one, but this one, when it translates to the eye, is much more of a brown undertone, and this one's much more gold. So it's just more about kind of it being monochromatic and neon. I'm going to try and stay away from buying monochromatic palettes in the future because I can tell that they just kind of aren't my thing, and probably neon shadows too, but it's not bad quality. The next one that I have is the Milani Gilded Nude palette. I believe this actually did release this year. I like the color story. I think that Milani has good quality shadows. I don't think the mattes are overly pigmented, but the shimmers are very similar to that of like the Sigma formula. They perform in a very similar way. This was just very safe. It is a nude palette. I think it's great for beginners. I just don't think the mattes are the greatest in the world. Not a bad palette by any means. Would have just liked to see a little bit more pigmentation in the mattes. Other than that, it's a really good palette. I have two more here from BH Cosmetics. These are from their Birthstone series. This one is Pearl for the month of June. This is, again, I love these palettes. There's nothing wrong with the quality. Maybe my only complaint with this is that it has one pressed glitter, and I'm not above using pressed glitters. I just don't use them that often. And so with a palette like this, you kind of do lose one shade where you could have maybe given us something different that we actually could have used more frequently. Again, not a bad palette. It's just, I normally get like 2 looks out of this. And so I would have liked to have had maybe something else here to get a little bit more variety, but I think this is good quality from BH Cosmetics. The next one that I have is from the same collection. This one is Citrine for the month of November. Again, love the quality. Would have liked to have seen maybe not a pressed glitter here and something else. This is kind of a one and done look. Like, I'm just gonna get one kind of look out of it. I really can't create 2 different looks out of it. And so I think it's a fun yellow palette, just probably not something I reach for that often. I do love having this like yellow shimmer here. Really nice. Could have done without the pressed glitter. Do love these. Super hard to rank these, honestly. The next one that I have is from Ace Beauté. This is the Violet Sage palette. I'm pretty sure this was a subscription exclusive, and I don't think you can purchase this on its own. And I thought that when I got this in BoxyCharm, it would be just like a filler palette for me. I didn't think the quality was going to be great. I really don't have a lot of Ace Beauté palettes in my collection. I haven't tried a lot, but honestly, the quality in this is really good. The shadows are super long lasting, and the way they perform together is really, really nice. This shade and this shade, they create depth. They blend together. They look really good. I think it's more of a color story thing for me. It's very floral. I don't grab a lot of purples, like I said. I don't grab a lot of greens very often, even though I did create a green look today. But if I'm gonna grab a green, it's just probably not gonna be from this palette. It just doesn't overly excite me in terms of the color story, but honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with the quality. The next one that I have is from Nobla. This is from the Cutie collection. This one is in Wild Berry. This is still available for purchase. I really like tones like this. I actually tried to get my hands on like the entire collection and only ended up picking up 2. This comes down to another topper shade. This is my absolute favorite shade in this palette. It's like a duochrome. It's beautiful. It's kind of shifty. It's shimmery, but it's a topper. And that upsets me. Why my favorite shimmer shade in the palette is the topper. Push this at the bottom. That's really what did it for me. Yeah, it just has no payoff, no real pigment. It's kind of shiny, but there's not a lot going on. I do like the color story overall. I think Nobla shadows actually perform really well. I don't think they're the longest lasting, but I do think that they're pigmented. Yeah, I think what just kind of pushed it down for me is that my favorite shade was the topper. The next one that I have is also from the Cutie collection, and this one is in Coral. I just prefer this color story a little bit more. I love the oranges. I love the deep red in here. I love the brown. I just think you can create a really fiery look with this. And I love that this Mandarin shade here is a really impactful shimmer. I I just love shimmers every day. I wear a shimmer every day, and I'm not the kind of person that likes to grab from multiple palettes, and I like light shimmers. So having this in here, being impactful, was a little bit better than the Wild Berry one. I think you can get a fiery look out of this. Again, just not the longest lasting shadows, but pretty decent quality. The next one that I have is a quad from Tom Ford. This is the Eye Color Quad in a 04 Honeymoon. I have never been really impressed with Tom Ford shadows, honestly. I picked this up from Neiman Marcus. I kind of liked the color story. I wanted to give another shot to a different Tom Ford palette. These all looked like a baked formula, but it's just okay. They're not overly pigmented. They're pretty nice. The color story is right up my alley, something that looks kind of date night or kind of glam, and I liked that about it. These are all satins, so you're gonna get a pretty, you know, satin shimmery look, which I don't mind. It's just that they're not pigmented, not like overly pigmented. This being their deepest shade took me quite a bit to actually build up depth in the outer corner. I just didn't think it was that impactful. So, you know, I mean, Tom Ford quads retail for $90, so even though I want luxury, I still want pigment. Okay, I'm gonna do it. The next one that I have up is from Huda Beauty. This is the Empowered palette. I like the color story. Like, don't get me wrong on that. I am a warm toned eyeshadow girl for the most part, like on an everyday basis, because I'm fair skinned. I think that cooler tone shadows tend to look muddy on me. That's just what I've come to find. Could be totally wrong about that, but that's how I feel about it. So this being a warm tone palette actually really excites me. But some of these shimmers don't seem like they're the same formula. This one right here, it's like, I don't know, I could barely get it to pick up. This is a chunky hot mess. This one barely picks up. And so that's 3 shimmers out of the palette that just don't give me a lot. And like, you can see how much I've depressed those shades trying to get my finger to pick these shadows up. I wasn't overly impressed with the quality of this palette. I have made comments before where if Huda came out with an all yellow palette, I would still buy it. And it's still true. Like, that's hasn't changed. But I do think that the quality on this wasn't great in some of the shimmers. I don't find any issue with the mattes. I just wish for $67 that the shimmers were just better. I mean, almost all of them are terrible. Even this one right here, this Bold Moves one that I didn't point out earlier, it's also a chunky hot mess. Like, it's just a hot mess. The palette's a hot mess. And then some of these mattes actually look very similar. There's 3 of them here. This one, this one, this one. I mean, even those 2. Like, it was hard getting depth in some of those, and you can still get it because you have like deeper shades like this and this that you can put in the outer corner. It's just like really super similar in a lot of cases. And yeah, the shimmers are like your cousin who comes over drunk for Thanksgiving dinner, whatever. The next one that I have is a release this year from Kaleidos. This is the Quad in Flowing Haze. This comes down to what I just said before. Not a formulation thing, it's just a tone thing. I think the quality is fantastic, but I think these 2 shades here, they blend together and look exactly the same. And they look super muddy on me. And maybe it's because I'm a bit beginner and I don't do eyeshadow that well. I just couldn't get them to look different and create depth. I do think having these 2 darker shades gives good depth. It was just when I tried to pair these 2 together, it was like, you know, it was a total wash. There wasn't anything different between the 2. And I would have liked a lighter shimmer, honestly. Like, if they had taken out one of these and then had just put like, you know, 2 shimmers and 2 mattes instead of 3 mattes and 1 shimmer, I think I probably would have liked this palette a little bit more. But I am obsessed with Kaleidos formula. I will continue to buy their releases so long as I think the color story will work for me. Yeah, I was just a little disappointed in how kind of muddy this looked, but other than that, it's really, really good quality. The next one that I have is from Cara Beauty. This is Cara Duo on it, and this is their Pro 11 Gentle Teaser palette. I saw someone else on YouTube talking about this brand, that they had picked them up in TJ Maxx, and so the next time I was at TJ Maxx, I actually did see one of her palettes, and so I picked it up. I was actually really surprised by this quality. I think this is a really good beginner palette. I think it's chock full of neutrals and pinks and colors that I absolutely love, and it goes from pretty light to pretty dark. So she did a good job curating this. I don't think that the shimmers here are the best in the world. I think they're good. I don't think they're all created equal. There's definitely some different formulas in here. They're not all the same, but I mean, I love the colors. I love the variety between mattes and shimmers. I think overall it's really good. Did I mention it's hard to rank them? So I think this is a really good overall palette. I think it's kind of an overlooked brand. I think that these are fairly inexpensive, but if you were in TJ Maxx, I would definitely suggest picking this up because I don't think it's bad. Here's a swatch of one of the shimmers. I mean, some of them are not great, and then some of them are. Like, I can swatch a different one. So I get definitely some different varying formulas and some of the shimmers, and so some of them feel like toppers, which again is just not my favorite. And so some of them I don't get a whole lot of pigmentation out of, which are, you know, a lot of the lighter ones. And you know, you've heard me say that I actually like a lot of light shimmers because I like them in the inner corner of my eye. And so when some of the light shimmers are a little bit more blah and not as impactful, it sometimes drops the palette a little bit lower. I just don't love every single shimmer in there, but I think the color story was really nice. The next one that I have is also from BH Cosmetics. This is the Opalescent palette. I like the quality of this. I just don't think it's BH Cosmetics' best formulation. I do find issues with the circular panned shadows that they create. For whatever reason, whether these smaller circle pans, they just don't seem like the best quality. I think all of these shimmers are exactly the same. There's a good variety between mattes and shimmers. I like this palette. It's just that I know that BH Cosmetics does better formulation than this because I have it in my collection. And so I think this is good and I like the color story, but there are some similarities here. Again, it's just that where some of these mattes look pretty identical to some of the other mattes. And sometimes that bothers me a little bit, like these two shades here. Just because they put them super far away doesn't mean they're going to trick us into thinking like they're that different. Pretty decent quality, not my favorite from BH Cosmetics, and definitely some similarities in the matte shades. The next palette that I have was a recent release from Essence. This is the Pumpkins Pretty Please palette. I actually really like this. I like the color story, I liked the quality, I liked the depth. I think these are pretty long lasting. I don't think this is the best formulation in the world, but I think it's really cute. Like, I think this was really good quality from Essence. I don't think this is very expensive. I have noticed this is already sold out, so I don't know if this was like a limited edition release or Thanksgiving. You can see the little pumpkin imprints on them. It's just really good. It was really good quality. It barely looks like I've even touched this, but I've used this palette like 5 times. And I've even used the mattes like a ton. Like these 3 I've used to create like every eye look, and it doesn't even look like I've used it at all, which tells you that there's just not a lot of kickback in the pan. They're pretty good quality shadows. So I thought this was really good. Probably the best drugstore palette that I actually tried this year. It gets way more difficult from here on out. I know I'm probably just gonna keep saying that, but like, yeah, this is super hard. Like, this is so stressful, honestly. You do these and you're like, am I doing it right? Is this right? Is that really how I feel about it? Who knows? Okay, so the next one that I have is a quad from Chanel. I recently just picked this up from Neiman Marcus because I've never tried the Chanel eyeshadow formula, and I think that it's okay. This one just happens to be an all satin palette. I don't know if that's normal for them. Oh, by the way, this one is in here. I'll just show you the name of this palette. I do like this. I created a really nice look out of this. I think that it's pretty good quality. I think it's pretty long lasting, and I'm not afraid of an all satin or all shimmer eye look, not at all. But these 2 shades are really, really similar. And while they kind of look different, like this one has more of a gold base and this one looks like it has more of a brown base, it just doesn't translate that way on the eyes. You'd think that it would because you swatch it next to each other like on your arm and you can tell how different they are. But by the time you get them on your eyes, it's like, it's just not the way it works. You just don't have enough space sometimes. And so this is pretty expensive, as you can imagine. I liked the formulation. I thought it was pretty long lasting. I guess I just really didn't like that those 2 shades looked so similar, not only in the pan, but on the eyes. The next one that I have is from Moira Beauty. This is a brand that I tried for the first time this year. This is the I'm Falling For You palette, and this is from their Love Letter series. I think these are really good quality. I think the shimmers are actually something else. I really liked them. I think they're really creamy. They're very pigmented. They're very reflective. I think the mattes were really good. I think they did a good variety. Like, there's nothing duplicated here, and I love it. Like, these 2 are not the same. This is a gold and this is a brown. I don't know if it's translating that way. And this one is like a champagne and this one is a pink. Like, there's just no duplications. It's a good even disbursement between mattes and shimmers. I think the layout of the color story was really nice. I thought the quality was really good. I don't think it's my absolute favorite, but I think it's really, really good. And again, this is just a palette that's really good for beginners. So I have nothing bad to say about this palette, not even. There's just nothing bad to say about it. I guess that it's just maybe not my longest lasting formula. It's maybe not my most pigmented, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think that this is a really cute concept. It's a little bulky. Maybe that's the only thing I don't like about it, but I just think it's really cute. It comes in a package that has a letter already pre-written that you can give to, you know, your lover and send them. You just put a stamp on it. So I think it's really cute concept. Yeah, nothing bad to say about this one. The next palette that I have is from Lorac. This is the Pro Palette in Soleil. I love Lorac formulas. I do find that they're very long lasting shadows and the shimmers are very, very nice. What I dislike about this palette is that these 3 shades look almost identical. 1, 2, 3. I like the setup of this. I like that it goes from light to dark. I like that it's half matte and half shimmers. I like the layout of it. I like the pan size. I like that it's compact. There's a lot of things that I like about this palette. But yeah, these 3 mattes look almost the same. These 3 shimmers look almost the same. And when they translate to the eyes, there's no difference. Lorac is not like super inexpensive. They're not super expensive either, but they're kind of pricier. And so when you get a palette like this and you have so many shades that look so similar on the eyes, I definitely do get a little disappointed. But the quality of Lorac for me is honestly a 10 out of 10. The next one that I have is from Violet Voss. This one surprised me. This is the Sun-Kissed Summer palette. I freaking love this color story. Every one of these shades looks so good with the other one. I love creating fiery eyeshadow look, and you have this like what's called berry hot, this sun-kissed. Oof, these shimmers are so nice. These mattes together, even this one and this one, this like mauve-y and this like just this muted yellowy orange, they're super beautiful together. I love the eye looks I create every time I wear this. I think the name of the palette is perfect, Sun-Kissed Summer. That's how I feel about it every single time I wear this. And I honestly think the quality of this is super, super good. So again, this is probably one that I thought would be a filler palette in my collection, but I love the quality of this. I love reaching for it and I love the color story. The next one that I have, I'm ranking where I am, and it's not because of the color story or the formulation, it's simply for packaging. The packaging honestly gets a 1 out of 10 for me. And I'm afraid to turn it over and show you because it's gonna be like a freaking New Year's Eve party happened in here. So this is the Glamlight and Michaela collaboration. This is the first time that I ever tried the Glamlight formula, and I think that it's honestly superb. I think that it's really, really good. Unfortunately, with all those glitters, they just didn't seal these sides very well, and so over time the glue has kind of come up, and so if I turn it this way or this way, all of these glitters just falls out. Like that's all it does. So yeah, every single time I touch this thing, I am just, oh, there it goes. I'm just covered in glitter. I just hate the packaging. But honestly, the color story and the curation of this is superb. Like you get a really good rainbow selection. I think you can draw from the top rows and get really nice neutrals. I think you can get a more orangey look and a pink look if you really wanted to, which are kind of the neutral colors that I reach for quite a bit. And I think the shimmer formula is fantastic. I think Glamlight does a really, really good job with their formulation. I think they're really long lasting, pigmented. I don't have anything wrong to say about the formulation. It's literally simply that like the whole thing is just kind of falling apart. And so I thought that they could have done a better job with this instead of looking like a frat house kind of, honestly. I'm afraid I'm not going to recover from like all this glitter. It's everywhere. The next couple that I have are from BH Cosmetics. These are from the larger travel size series. This one is the Paris palette. I think that the quality of the travel series is probably the second best that I've ever tried in any one of their collections that they've launched. And the majority of these, I really love the color stories. This is just a color story that's a little bit deeper, and I won't reach for this on an everyday basis. And so I don't reach for this one as much as I do some of my other ones because they're more wearable, like for me. And yeah, most of these in here are not wearable for me on an everyday basis. And sometimes in a palette that's like this, where you get some colorful or deeper shades can be thrown in with more neutral shades, and I'll draw from the neutral ones more and then sometimes play with the dark ones, but I just don't find myself reaching for this because it just has maybe like these 3 shades here are really the only ones that I play with like on an everyday basis, or that I feel comfortable wearing like going to the office. And so while I think it's a really good quality palette, it's the color story that does it for me. It's just not one that I reach for all the time, but it's nice to have in your collection. The next one that I have is the Hangin' in Hawaii palette. I love oranges. I told you this. I love pinks. I think this is a really good beginner neutral palette. Nothing wrong with the color story, except that maybe some of these shades are pretty similar. These 2 right here, very, very similar. There's 3 of them here that are the oranges that are also very similar. And so every time I open this palette, I'm like, dang, there's just not a lot of variety in here. Like even these 2 at the bottom seem like they're very similar shades. And so that's kind of disappointing, even though this is a color story that I just love and will wear on an everyday basis. And I grab for this a lot during the summertime. I mean, I grab for it a lot all year round. I don't really care, but Yeah, I mean, it's just that it gets me a couple of looks as opposed to like, it could have given me more because some of the shades are so similar. So that was a little bit disappointing. I think they could have added a little bit more variety in that palette. The next one that I have is also from BH Cosmetics. This is the Give Up Step Back palette. This one was something that they probably did a collaboration to get proceeds to donate to a certain charity, because it says 100% of net proceeds donated to Step Up. So this is probably a palette that you couldn't get your hands on after it launched and like released for the limited time that it did. I just think this color story is super fun. Every time I grab for this, honestly, like I just have such a good time. There's no issues with the quality. It's a color story thing for me. I think this is good BH quality shadows. And even though these two shades are similar, they're different formulas. This one is a satin shimmer and this one is fully matte. And so you can really see the shimmers in this top one when it translates to the eyes. I have a good time with this palette. I think that having some of these neutral ones over here makes it like a more everyday wearable one. And for whatever reason, the quality on this is just, oh, it's really good, honestly. The next one that I have is also from BH Cosmetics. This is from the Weekend Vibes collection. And this one is Blueberry Muffin. I gotta tell you guys, the Weekend Vibes collection, honestly, the best quality in any of their palettes. It goes like Weekend Vibes and then the Travel series. I just think the formulation on this is, oh my God, it's so good. The reason this one is where it is, even though I have a ton more BH Cosmetics to go over, because I made it a mission to get my hands on as many BH Cosmetics palettes as I could this year, because I was so scared when they announced that they were going out of business that I wasn't going to be able to get the palettes anymore. Fortunately, they were purchased by Makeup Revolution and they still have a lot in stock. I'm getting off on a tangent here, but this is just a cooler tone palette. And so cooler tones for me isn't something that I reach for all the time. I think the quality of this is something else. And that's why it ranks higher. Even though the color story is not one that I reach for all the time, oof, the quality on this is just so good. I can't even tell you. They blend together beautifully. I get such good pigmentation. I love the shimmers in here. I honestly think the quality in this just moves it up, even though this is a palette that I almost never reach for. But when I think of grabbing for like these deeper blues, I do think of this one. So that kind of tells you something. The next one that I have is also from BH Cosmetics. This is the BFF Alondra and Elsie collaboration. Again, it's just one of those things where there's something with the quality of this palette. The curation is okay for me. It's kind of all over the place, and there are some similar shades. This one and this one look identical. They honestly have no difference even looking at them from right here. I just think the quality in this is so good. I just don't know what it is. Like there's just something about the way these mattes perform that makes it stand out over some of the other BH Cosmetics ones. And I usually have issues with the, like I said before, the circular pans, but the quality on this is just so good. They're really long lasting. I don't know, it's a really sturdy palette. You even get a mirror. So I have really enjoyed using this one. The mattes here are just, I don't know, 10 out of 10. The next one that I have is the So Fly palette from Colourpop. I like Colourpop. I don't have a huge Colourpop collection. There have been two palettes that I have tried from Colourpop this year that I ended up decluttering earlier. Maybe I tried them in the end of last year. I don't know, but I ended up decluttering them earlier this year. And I just thought they were not the same Colourpop formula. They were the two palettes that I've ever tried from Colourpop that were just inconsistent for me. So I got rid of them. But I think this one is actually a really good quality palette and I have fun with it. There's this duochrome in here. There doesn't appear to be any like super shocks in these, but I just think it's kind of a fun color story. I do actually use this blue or like teal or whatever color it is to kind of deepen up the outer corner, and it's just kind of fun. Like I don't get very many looks out of this palette, but I think it's really good quality. I don't know, just something about the quality of Colourpop. Their shimmers, their mattes. This one was just pretty consistent and I thought it was a pretty fun color story. The next one that I have is also from Colourpop. This is the Getting Fresh palette. I think that I ended up getting this like at the end of summer, and this is more of a spring palette, and that's probably when it did launch, and there is a couple of super shocks in here. I think the formula is really good. I do find some of the shades are a little bit light and don't have a lot of pigmentation, and maybe that's the only kind of inconsistency that I find with the quality of this palette. But some of these ones right here, they just, I mean, they don't have a whole lot of pigmentation. They're not meant to, because they're kind of lighter shade. This fiery kind of like reddish orange one is super fun. There's this duochrome super shock one that's like greeny. So I enjoyed using it a little bit more, and I did travel with this so I could get like a variety of looks out of it, and I think it's pretty good quality from Colourpop. yeah, it's so tough to do these next ones. Honestly, I could have moved them all over the place and probably would have been happy with it, but I gotta do what I gotta do. So the next one that I have is from Viseart. This is the London Etoile. Viseart had a lot of new releases this year, and this one was like just okay for me. I think that this one kind of looks like a nothing on my eye, and so it's usually only good for me to blend some of the shades together, but they don't have any like really light transition shades. This one right here is a pretty, like, I don't know, it's almost a warm toned brown, and it's the lightest shade aside from this one that doesn't work for me. And so they just have this purple here, which I wouldn't use as a transition shade, and I don't think that these two look good together. And so it's a pretty deep grungy palette. It's another one that I'm like a collector of Viseart shadows, and when I think the color story would work for me, I like 10 out of 10, I'm always gonna purchase it. That's just how I feel about it, because I think the quality of Viseart is like superb. I think their mattes are beautiful, long lasting, super pigmented, and I think their shimmers are probably some of my favorite, like sophisticated, just light formula. Like, they're very reflective, but they're very easy to work with. It's just a really good formula, and honestly, like, being able to change out the color story because you can pop all of these out is actually nice. So if you're ever like mad at the layout, like, don't be, you can just change it. But yeah, I mean, I think that I have a hard time like getting more than one look out of this that isn't just like a dark kind of muddy mess, honestly. And I just think that that purple matte is just a little bit out of place for this color story, but that's the only thing that I can say about it. The quality is still a 10 out of 10 for me. The next one that I have is also from Viseart. This is the La Mira palette. This is also a new release this year, and it has all of the warm tones that I love. The only issue that I have with this is that these ones look very similar. They translate that way onto the eyes. But other than that, honestly, again, it's that darn purple that they put in there. Like, I could switch it out. It's just like that purple doesn't go with any of the other colors. And so I can use that purple to deepen up the outer corner, but it's like a cool tone purple with mostly warm tone shades. So it's just me being a novice and not being able to like probably work with this palette as like a, you know, a beginner. I'm just not that great at it, but it just seemed out of place for me. Everything else in this palette I love. I create fiery fall looks with it. It was just that purple matte again that I just didn't understand. The next palette that I have also released this year, I showed you its counterpart. This is one of the quads from Kaleidos. This one is in Glowing Iris. I like this one a little bit more than the other one because you actually do get a bit of depth in here, and it's all monochromatic. It's all purple. And while I don't reach for some of my other monochromatic palettes, like I just don't think about reaching for something that's all purple, I will think about this one because it's just such good quality that it's hard not to. And the shimmers in here are honestly like dipping your finger into like satin butter. They're just so good. But the reason that this one frustrates me a little bit is because I would have liked to see a little bit of depth between these two shades, or if they could just make 2 shimmers and 2 mattes, that would be awesome. I would love that because I would have liked to have seen like a color like this in a shimmer, something that's just a little bit lighter. That's the only thing that kind of disappointed me about this, is that it's 3 mattes to 1 shimmer, and so you don't get like the lighter shimmer option. That's my personal and only complaint about that one. The next one that I have is from Juvia's Place. This is the Nubian. I picked up a couple of extra Juvia's Place palettes this year because I found them last year, or I tried them for the first time last year, and I loved the formulation so much. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go check out all their palettes, and whatever color story I like, I'm just gonna get it. So this one's more of a like all brown, and so I don't reach for this all the time. What I do like about it is that there are mostly warm tone browns, and I do like that because I think that it looks good on me. And honestly, even though you might not be able to tell from back here, these colors, they're all very different. And when they're similar, they're different finishes. The only similarities are these two, but you can tell this has more of a reddish base and this one has more of a brown base. But everyone else that's like similar in color, like these two, they're not the same. One's a shimmer, one's a matte, there you go. I just don't reach for this all the time because it's pretty grungy. It's pretty dark, but the quality on these is so good. Juvia's Place shadows for drugstore are probably some of my favorite quality shadows. I have nothing bad to say about them. Most of their palettes that I have tried have been really consistent. It was just kind of a color story thing for me, but I don't regret buying it because I will reach into that, and every single time I do, I'm not disappointed with the quality. The next one that I have is the Nubian 3 Coral. I think this is such a fun color story. It's that oranges again that just really do it for me. And then when they have that like orange shimmer in there right here, like, I don't know, I just love orange shimmers, honestly. And I don't even mind the grays in here. I think the grays are actually like really muted and really light. And so you can get some pretty interesting looks out of this. I just like the color story in here. This is one of my like favorite like coral palettes, and the quality is so good. The next one that I have is also from Juvia's Place. This is the Saharan. I like this one a little bit more because you get a little bit more variety. And I like this, like, this seems kind of out of place, but I like having this white shimmer that has a blue undertone to it. I think that's really unique. I probably have one in one of my BH Cosmetics one, but aside from that, I don't. I just love this kind of like, I don't know, pop of orange here. You can throw it in without it being an all neon palette. So I kind of like this one just a little bit more. The next one I have also released this year, but this one is from ABH. This is the Rose Metals palette. I think it's a little bit grungy. I do like that she has now like this grungy story in her line. Like that doesn't bother me at all. But I think that like this was just a more powdery formula than most of her other palettes. And I mentioned that when I did my try on video, like I did a dedicated video to this palette when it released. They're very dusty. Like I don't know how else to put it. This one is just like it's super dusty, and I know ABH formula is like that for the most part. I just thought this one was even more dusty. And I think that I bought it mostly to kind of like try it because it was a new release and I like the warm tones in it. I just felt like everything was maybe a little bit muddy, and I don't usually get that with ABH. If you guys have like tried this before, if you found that this was kind of a different formulation than some of her other palettes, I mean, I'd love to hear your feedback. The next one that I have is the Major Dimension 2 palette from Patrick Ta. I'm not as over the moon about this as a lot of people. I thought it was good. I just didn't think it was great. I think what makes it kind of unique is that it has those two cream shadows that I actually will dip into to create an eye look. And I think that they perform really, really well. What I just kind of get disappointed about is that like some of these shades translate exactly the same on my eye. And again, I don't know if it's just because like I'm a beginner, but that's the way that they looked. And so if I didn't jump, like if I didn't alternate from this to this and this to this, I got like the same kind of shade on my eye. And so I was having trouble getting depth when I would pair some of these shades together. And so when I was having to like skip every other shadow to create a look that had depth, I guess maybe that was a little bit annoying to me. And then honestly, these three shimmers right here, when they were on the eye, they looked pretty similar. There just wasn't a lot of variation. And I think this is really chunky formula. And I'm not always into chunky. Like it's chunky, and every single one of them is like that. It's just an overly chunky formula. Again, this could be something that I'm just not super experienced with eyeshadow, because a lot of people that are pretty good at it, I have seen them say like they loved this palette. I just wasn't over the moon as much as some other people. I thought it was nice. I just didn't think it was like the best one that I tried. The next one I have is from Natasha Denona. This is the Retro Glam palette. I didn't find any issue with the quality of this. There were just a couple of things with this palette that just, it kind of confused me. So the first is this is a very like spring color story. And the fact that it like launched and released right at like the winter time, I just felt like was kind of off. It just doesn't seem like a winter time color story. And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, there's definitely some like green, kind of cooler tone greens in here that actually look really good for that. I was able to create like a really pinky look out of this that I really liked. I liked the quality of this. I didn't find any issue with that. It's just not my favorite color story ever, and I think that's kind of what it is. But again, I think that what I'm trying to do with Natasha Denona palettes is that I think I'm trying to collect them at least a little bit, or try some ones that aren't like mostly cool tones to see how they work for me, because some of her cool tone mattes give me some issues. Probably just not my favorite color story, and that's what's really kind of doing it for me. The next one that I have is the Sunset palette by Natasha Denona. The thing that pushes things a little bit higher is color stories, obviously, for me. And I think this one gives you like a really good fiery look, and I just like that. What I do find with this palette is that some of the shimmers are a little inconsistent. Like this really white one I tried to use a couple of times, and it's not very impactful. It's not very pigmented. It's not very reflective. But overall, the reason that I bought this is because I'm just down with like warm toned fiery eyeshadows. It's just my thing. So I did like it. I think it was really just honestly that this shimmer right here was a bummer, and it's a shimmer I would normally grab for because it's just that lighter shimmer, but yeah, it wasn't really pigmented. So that's really the only thing with that palette. The next 5 that I have are all from BH Cosmetics, and they're all from the same collection, and I've just kind of ranked them in order that I like them from least to best in terms of the color story, because the quality on these is really, really good. It's the same like great BH Cosmetics formulation. It's just that some of these, the curations of them are again, just not like ones that I reach for on an everyday basis. So this is from the Say What or Say It collection, I think is what it's called. And this one is Do Not Disturb. This color story is actually, I don't know, it's really pretty. Like you can get some really pretty looks out of this. These blue shimmers in here are really nice. And I think it's good. It's just not an everyday reach for palette. It's really, really good quality. It's really blendable, super long lasting. The mattes are fantastic. You do get a little mirror in here. And I like that it has this lighter shimmer that's really good quality. It's just the blues and purples I don't reach for all that often. The next one that I have is called Let That Shit Go. And I like this one a little bit more because it has some neutral shades in here. Like I can grab this for the browns and create it for an everyday look, and I like the greens. What I really like is this Shake It Off shade right here. This super lime green shimmer shade, such good quality, super punchy. So I like it a little bit better than the last one. Aside from the fact that I'm wearing greens today, it's just, I don't reach for them that often. The next one that I have is Looking Like a Snack or Looking Like a Snack. This is just a more everyday wearable palette for me, and mostly because of this shade right here. But I will blend like this shade in with some of the pinks. I really like doing that, like taking coral shades and mixing them with other shadows. I just think that it looks really good, and it goes from pretty light to pretty dark, so you can deepen up a look with this. So I reach for this one a little bit more than the other two. One that I really like is the Optimistic AF because of the fiery tones that you get in here, and this LOL shade. Oh, these orange shimmers are so good, and BH Cosmetics just, I don't know, they do it. They really do it. They do such a good job for really affordable quality. A lot of these look like I have never even touched them because you just need the teeny tiniest amount to get such good pigment out of. So I like this one a lot. The last one that I have is Low Key Love You. I definitely reach for this one more than the other four because it's just so much more of a wearable color story for me. It also has that orangey shimmer shade down here. I love the mix of oranges and reds and browns, and so I really like that one. The next three that I have are also from BH Cosmetics, but these are from their larger travel series. And I think I have some other ones in here as well, but these are the last of them. The first one that I have up is Saint Tropez. I didn't think I was going to love this color story as much as I ended up liking it. I actually created some looks that were pretty wearable. I kind of like this. It's like a muted rainbow palette. Like it's got a lot of variety of colors, but you can create some looks that are very wearable. I think, like I said, the travel series is like the second up in terms of quality that I've tried from BH Cosmetics. I just think that I really, really love the color of shimmers in here. You've got like one that's like duochrome. They're almost just wet. They just work so well. They're super reflective. I like this one more than I thought I would, and I like some of the yellow tones in here. I thought that was cool that they threw those in. The next one that I have is the Lost in Los Angeles palette. I did not think that I would love this as much as I did. This is an all pastel palette, and I thought, okay, you're gonna get it. You're probably gonna wear it once and then you're not gonna reach for it again. But I actually did. I mean, some of these shades are like the kind that I would reach for on an everyday basis, and because they're pastel, I don't know, they were just a little bit more muted and they looked good for everyday wear. The variety of the color of shimmers was super nice. I really actually enjoyed reaching for that one. The next one that I have is Puerto Rico palette. This again is not going to surprise you if you take a look at the color story, why it's where it is, just because it's that kind of color story that I absolutely love. And some of these are just super cool. Like this magenta shimmer, it's so good. So really, really fun color story right up my alley. The next one that I have is also from BH Cosmetics. This is the Mimosa palette. I'm going to show you the color story and you're going to be like, oh yeah, no wonder why she loves it. Well, yeah, I think these colors are super great for summer and spring. I think they're super punchy and beautiful, and they're just right up my alley. The next one that I have is from Odin's Eye. This was in collaboration with Angelica Neekfest here on YouTube, and this was the Hella palette. I think that Odin's Eye does a really good job in their more recent formulations in their palettes. I think that some of the older formulations, a lot of the shadows like had a lot of oils in them, and they would tend to like leak into the cardboard packaging of my palettes, and I don't find that with any of the more recent ones. I think that the reason this is where it is for Odin's Eye is simply because this is just not a color story that I think to reach for all the time. I think that if I'm filming for YouTube, I can grab for this, but this just isn't something that I find creating an everyday look with. and it's only the pinks that I'll reach for on an everyday basis. And so this is kind of why this palette is there, but I think that Odin's Eye formula, super creamy, super reflective shimmers, the mattes blend beautifully together. I am wearing an Odin's Eye palette on me today, and I think it's just like the same great quality. This last section here, I feel like this was actually the hardest, but the next one that I have up is from Sigma. This is the new mod. I'm a fan of Sigma shadows. I have said this in the past. I think that they're really good quality. I think they blend together pretty well. I think this is a really like beginner friendly palette, and I think that that's important. I think in formulation and in color stories, you have to think about the end user, and there's a lot of us. I mean, I think most of us are pretty novice. I don't think a lot of us, you know, spend a lot of time practicing eyeshadow. I just have this year, and I feel I've gotten a little bit better, but yeah, I still create some looks that I'm like, what have you done? I did pick this up right at the springtime, and I was wearing it pretty frequently. I think the shimmers are really good. I think they're very similar to Milani, but just a little bit more punchy. I think I did say that earlier, which is Milani's like the drugstore version of Sigma shadows. Everything just blends really nicely together. I just never have any issue with the Sigma formulation. It's more just of a judgment of color story, and I think that's like all that it comes down to for me, because I think they're just really easy to work with. The next one that I have is the Alice in Wonderland collab that Sigma did. I think that I like this one a little bit more than the pinky one because you have like a little bit more variety in here. You can get like a neutral look, but then I've played with these blues and created a look that I really like. And so I like that variety. And some of these, like matching this yellow in here, I just thought was really nice. But overall, what really gets me is that this palette I felt like was really good and true to the collaboration. Do you guys ever like look at collabs and go, yeah, why did they curate it that way for that collaboration? Like the color story sometimes just doesn't make sense for the collab that they're doing. I just kind of felt like, yeah, like they did a good job. They were trying to get, you know, like the Alice in Wonderland theme in here, and I just thought it was pretty true. And I've seen some poo-poo collaborations lately, so I thought this one was a good one. The next one that I have is also from Sigma. This is the Corderosa palette. I like this one the best because it does have the warm tone shades in there, which is just my cup of tea. You have the pinks, you also have the oranges and the warm tones, and so I like that, but you also have some browns so you can deepen up some looks. I just got more looks in terms of like variety on an everyday basis with this palette than I did the other two. The new mod was like a lot of just pinks, where in this one I can get like a variety between the oranges and pinks. So that's why I just preferred this one over those two. The next one that I have is the ABH Soft Glam palette. I've had the ABH Soft Glam too. This one's a little dirty for like 3 years now. And I told myself, you're gonna get your hands on the Soft Glam at some point. And so I did place the order this year. But I mean, I love ABH. Like I have no issue with ABH formula, even though I think that it's more powdery and it might bother some people. It just doesn't for me. But the one thing that really disappointed me about this, that just really made a big difference between the Soft Glam 1 and 2, is that my favorite shimmer shade, which is this shade here, it's a really, really light, like champagne shimmer, is called Dreamer. And it comes from a different palette. So they don't have that shade in here. They have Glistening and Fairy, which are, I hope I'm pointing to the right one, Glistening and Fairy, and they're just not the same. They're not the same like milky, buttery, satiny formula. It's just different. And so while I love this color story, I think it's great for beginners. I think it's great all year round. I think the quality is good. I think the curation of any kind of like sultry palette that I've ever seen, this is probably the best one of its kind, and I would have ranked it higher if I had known that it didn't have that Dreamer shade. I just didn't pay close enough attention, and someone did tell me, yeah, that Dreamer shade comes from somewhere else. And I was like, damn, because that's my favorite shimmer. The next three that I have are from Viseart. These are all recent releases, and this one is the San Francisco Etoile. I do like this color story. It's a lot of warm tones, so it's just something that I'll reach for. And when I first got it, I was like, wow, that teal in there is definitely out of place. But I created a liner with it, and because it's not like a purple like the other one, I actually think that it didn't clash with the eye look. I actually liked the teal that was in here. This shade right here, like it doesn't do anything for me. And so usually I'll just use this shade to kind of like diffuse some of the other shades, because I don't put like a lighter shade in my inner corner like some people do. I think it was good. It's just not my favorite color story from them. The next one that I have is the Petite Foie Garnet. This one is mostly a shimmer palette and then one matte shade. And actually, yeah, that matte again, I just use it to like diffuse some of the colors when I'm blending them together. So it's mostly useless for me. And I don't mind like an all shimmer palette or an all satin shimmer. Honestly, like I create some really good looks out of this. Again, fiery, something that I like, but it's the same look like every single time. So it's a pretty limiting palette. I don't know. I like that little burgundy. I like this more like goldy brown color up here. I think it's really pretty. And so I think to reach for it. And every time I make a look out of it, I'm like, yep, I like it. The last one from Viseart is also a Petit Pois. This is the Amelie palette. I just recently picked this up. I thought it was going to be like the most basic palette ever. I thought maybe the two mattes in here would look identical, that they wouldn't give me a lot of depth. One thing that I love about this palette is that what I was criticizing Kaleidos for, which is that they give you two mattes and two shimmers, and it's one pretty light shimmer and one pretty dark one. I only paused a little bit because I thought maybe the mattes were too similar, and I thought, well, that's a basic palette, Carrie. And then I put it on and I was like, dang, that look looks good. So you're just a basic kind of palette girl. I freaking love this palette. I get one look out of it and I love the look. I literally could probably wear this look and this palette every single day. That's just how basic I am. That's how much I love Viseart quality. So the next palette that I have is from Lunar Beauty. This is the Nude Prism palette. I was shocked by this quality. This was my first Lunar Beauty eyeshadow palette purchase, and I was blown away by the quality. I think the mattes are really blendable. They're very pigmented, but the shimmer quality is so good. It's like almost like a super shock. It's like a putty formula, but they're super reflective on the eyes. They're super easy to work with. And then you have a good variety of different colors in here. I just thought, yeah, if you're gonna make a nude palette, go from light to dark. Putting the shimmers in the middle was nice. Grading them this way, super beginner friendly. It was really, really good quality, and I was super surprised by the formulation in the shimmers. And some of these even like look like duochromes, like this one right here. I don't know, I overall thought like, wow, that's a really well-rounded palette. And when I reach for it and create my looks, I'm like, yes, super easy, super good quality, nice indie brand shadows, and it's neutral. So what else could you ask for someone who likes good quality neutral shadows? The next two palettes that I have are from Adept Cosmetics, and another one that I tried this year for the first time. The first one that I have here is Ninhydrin. Blown away by their shimmer formula. They're chunky, they're super reflective, they're probably not for the beginner, and they're not for everyday use. My criticism with these is that they do throw in some matte, and while I think the mattes are really blendable and pigmented, they just are useless. I am never gonna pair this shade and this shade together with any of these matte shades. And so I treat this as a companion palette, and I would have either liked to have seen more mattes or just make it an all shimmer palette. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, but it's like, yeah, I don't use this and this with any of these. I've swatched the mattes, but I don't think I've ever even used them. So I just use it simply for the shimmers. But let me like swatch one of this shimmer for you. Like it's something else. They're chunky, they're reflective, they're duochromy, multi-chromy. Yeah, I mean, super duper good quality. Nothing wrong with the shimmer formulation. It's just more of a like take the mattes out or put more mattes in and make them complementary. But that's the only thing. I mean, the quality of Adept Cosmetics shimmer formula is honestly like probably some of the best that I've tried. The next one that I have is from Adept Cosmetics. It was the Heather Austin collaboration. This is definitely a more chunky formula in the shimmers than it is in the Ninhydrin palette, and you get a lot more multi-chromes in here, so I like it a little bit better. And I think that you can pair these two mattes together and these two mattes together. So I actually do like the fact that they've got 4 mattes in here. You can pair the two together, and there are shimmers in here that I would pair with these mattes. Like this one, for example, is a nice shimmer shade where if you use this one as a transition or a crease, and then you use this in the outer corner, that would work really well together. And I think the same thing about these three as well. For that reason, I thought it was good. I don't think that the shimmer formula is really for the faint of heart. So it's not like an everyday kind of shimmer formula. I just love having this in my collection, honestly. The next two that I have are actually from the same collection. This is from Melt Cosmetics. This is the Bad Side Zodiac palette, and this one is in Earth. I don't know if people didn't like these, but I actually really did. I tried Melt Cosmetics for the first time when I ordered these palettes, and it was a 4 in the collection, but I only picked up 2 that I thought, one, kind of looked unique for my collection, and then 2, they looked like color stories that I could probably reach for on an everyday basis, because sometimes I try and keep that in mind. Will it be something I only wear for YouTube, or will it be something that I can actually wear in my everyday life? I thought the quality of these was really good. I had no issue with this. I don't care if it's boring. The quality was fantastic. I created some really good looks with it, and I loved that you can create a whole look with one row and a whole look with the other row, or you could mix the two together and actually get some really good looks, and I really did. I don't know if Melt has like an on again, off again good formulation. I think maybe I have heard that, but I thought these were really good quality, so I really enjoyed that one. The next one is the Air palette. It's just more wearable for me, and I like taking this deeper purple and pairing it with this to give depth in the outer corner. I wore this one for like a work party, and I liked the look that I created. I can wear this on an everyday basis without feeling like you've overdone your shadow and now you're in front of people kind of day. My only criticism is that this like light shimmer right here is like really chunky, and I kind of had to press it back together. But aside from that, I thought it was really good quality. The shades blended nicely together and they gave really good depth, and I thought they were really long lasting and like pigmented. They were really like poppy eye looks. The next one that I have is actually kind of strange that I would put something so boring so high, but the quality on this, it had me 100%. So this is the Oma by Sharon C recent quad launch that she put out. I think there was probably like 5 in the collection. Oma Beauty is a brand that is sold in Ulta, but Oma by Sharon C is the more affordable line that she sells in CVS and Walmart. And when she had a couple of new releases that came for the more affordable line, I actually did pick them up, and I picked up this really safe like eyeshadow quad. It's called the Eye Service Eyeshadow Quad in Eyes Baby. And then I did a trying new makeup video, and I put this on and I was like, hello, these are really good quality. What the heck? Like, I was not expecting this out of this really kind of boring quad, but it's nicely curated. You have 2 mattes, 2 shimmers, you get good depth. Boom. It created such a simple, easy, beautiful eye look, super pigmented, super easy friendly, didn't take hardly any blending. They basically did all the work for me, and the shimmers went fantastic. Let me swatch these shimmers for you. I mean, look how punchy they are. They do something, they're super reflective, they're really good quality. It was just really good for drugstore, honestly. And so I thought this must be the same formulation that comes in her larger palette. So I picked up one from Ulta in her larger palette, and I cannot wait to try that formula and see if it compares to this, because it's in a really like pinky and beautiful color story. And I have just not played with it yet because I've been playing with so many others. But yeah, I just kept reaching for this. I kept reaching for it because I'm boring and because I can wear it like every single day if I wanted to. So I just really enjoyed that palette. You guys, I am down to my top 3 palettes. They were probably the most used in the later part of the year, but the first one up that I have is the ABH Nouveau palette. I recently got this, but honestly, I looked at it and thought, okay, that's kind of boring. Okay, like, all right, you know, it has this lilac here that I probably will say is out of place, and I'm going to, and then one shade that I'm not going to do a lot with. But for whatever reason, this was so much better quality than the Rose Metals, which seemed like they tried to change up their formulation because that one is their more recent palette, but the quality in this is just so good. I think it's slightly less powdery than their other formulation in their older palettes, the ones that are a little bit bigger. I think that this one was like a step outside of what they've done in the past and still better than the Rose Metals formulation. I could reach for this all the time. I thought it was really good quality, blended itself, not as powdery, created some everyday looks. I loved the variety of shimmers and mattes. I don't know, for whatever reason, I just kept reaching for this and was just never disappointed in the quality. Okay, you guys, we're down to the last 2. So in second place is the My Dream palette from Natasha Denona. I love the color story in this palette. I think that this is exactly how I would curate like my favorite palette, something that I could wear on an everyday basis. I just think that when she created something that says My Dream, like it was my dream too. honestly. There's some warm tones in here that you can create some fiery looks, like I've said over and over. That's kind of what I like to do. And then I love deepening up the outer corner with these two like satins. I just think that you get from really light to really dark. You can create some really neutral looks if you want to, or go more glam. I love this like orange fiery shimmer shade here. I didn't have any issues with blending any of the mattes, which is something that I have noticed with Natasha Denona shadows in the past. And it's usually the cooler tone ones where I do have some patchiness issues with them, but I didn't get that with this. And so there are a lot of like older Natasha Denona palettes that she doesn't sell anymore that I really do like the color story in, but I just kind of figure like, okay, I'm not going to try and buy them secondhand. We'll just move on and move forward. And I think of her recent launches, favorite color story, hands down. I love this palette. I think it's good for beginners. I think it's good for every day. I think the quality was really good on it. So in first place, I do have this palette on my eyes today, and I'm actually really shocked that I placed this in the first place spot, but I just can't help it. This is the Merry Christmas palette from Odin's Eye. Unfortunately, this sold out really quickly. Then it was restocked, and then the restock sold out. And I'm sorry that you can't get your hands on this anymore. Potentially you can get your hands on this in like another way. If somebody didn't want it and they wanted to like resell it, then maybe you could pick it up. But I didn't think I would put this where it is for the color story alone. It's not something that I can wear on an everyday basis. Every time I create an eye look out of this, I'm always like, so am I like really good at doing eyeshadow now, or is it just the palette? And I think it actually might just be the palette, that it's just such good quality and it blends itself together so seamlessly. And the color story, like the way that it's laid out, is that you know the greens go with the greens, and you know that you can create looks like with the bottom row here and get something that's pretty, I don't know, you know, reddish, burgundy-ish, and it's really pretty. And every time I've played with this darn thing, I love the eye look that I come up with. And so I think about this palette even when I'm not playing with makeup. I'm like, man, I created a good eye look with that palette, and I think about what else can I do with it. Because of those reasons, I just had to put this in the #1 spot. I've just been loving this, and I'm really glad that I actually picked it up on launch day and like didn't snooze on it. So that is it, you guys. That is the wrap up of the 72 eyeshadow palettes that I tried this year that are still in my collection. I hope you're still hanging on with me until the end of the video. I'd love to hear in your comments if you have any of these palettes, if you agree with anything that I say, or if you disagree with any of the opinions that I had or my ranking. I'd love to hear that as well. If you're not a current subscriber, I hope you consider subscribing to my channel and stick around. I hope you're having a wonderful December. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, you guys, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.